you are watching Shalom World News. I'm Marina Grosu from Washington, D.C. Here are the latest headlines from around the world. Pope Francis will receive in audience the Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal in the Vatican on Thursday. The meeting will occur the day before the Pope's apostolic visit to Hungary. The Ukrainian Prime Minister will be in Italy on Wednesday, April 24th, to participate in the bilateral conference on the reconstruction of Ukraine at the Palazzo dei Congressi Convention Center in Rome, and deliver the conclusions with Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. Amid the fighting between Ukraine and Russia in the Donbas region, the Pope and the Prime Minister last met at the Vatican in March 2021. On Monday, April 24th, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres hailed the temporary departure of hundreds of staff members and their families from the capital, Khartoum, amid ongoing violence between the military and a paramilitary force for the past 2 weeks. Guterres declared before the UN Security Council that the United Nations is not abandoning Sudan and is dedicated to the Sudanese people and their desire for a safe and secure future. In a statement, he said that the relocation exercise had been completed without incident and that he appreciated the cooperation of the Sudanese army personnel and paramilitaries from the Rapid Support Forces, which allowed safe passage to Port Sudan on the Red Sea. The Secretary-General once again urged the parties to end hostilities right away and permit all civilians to leave areas where fighting is taking place. Meanwhile, on Monday, countries including the Gulf states and Russia were attempting to get citizens out, and there was an increasing outflow to neighboring nations. As many as 10,000 people have fled to South Sudan. Commemorating the 108th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide, hundreds of Armenians marched through the capital, Yerevan. Participants gathered in a central square, held torches, lit the Turkish and Azerbaijani flags, and took part in the march to the accompaniment of a brass band. The Ottoman Empire killed 1.5 million Armenian Christians between 1915 and 1923, and April 24th was the 108th anniversary of that genocide. According to Armenia, the Christians were targeted and were subjected to starvation, forced labor, expulsion, death marches, and massacres. Every year, people bring torches to the Armenian Genocide Memorial Complex in Yerevan to commemorate the carnage. Nikos Dendias, the foreign minister of Greece, said in a message commemorating that anniversary that it is everyone's moral obligation to do everything to preserve the memory of the victims. Despite protests from the UN, churches, and human rights organizations around the world, Nicaragua's authoritarian government is still repressing and persecuting the Catholic Church. A non-governmental organization called Monitoreo Azul y Blanco said that the Nicaraguan police had unlawfully taken into prison 39 persons in April, principally political opponents and Catholic parishioners. Panamanian priest Father Donaciano Alarcon was expelled from the country by the Sandinista regime after police said he had advocated for Bishop Rolando Alvarez, who is in jail on trumped-up charges. The growing anti-Catholic crackdown in Nicaragua continues to cause the bishops of the United States significant alarm. Bishop David Malloy, chairman of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops Committee on International Justice and Peace, underlined their unwavering solidarity with the Nicaraguan Church in a statement issued last week. Since April 2018, when a wave of anti-regime protests was brutally put down by Nicaraguan authorities, relations between the government and the Church have been strained. The Pontifical Academy for Life has come out with a statement clarifying the stand of its president, Archbishop Vincenzo Paglia, on assisted suicide, following backlash over a speech where Archbishop Paglia backed legalizing assisted suicide in Italy. In his speech, Paglia said that he believes it is conceivable to have a legal initiative that would decriminalize it in Italy under specific and particular conditions. Despite the Catholic Church's unequivocal teachings against assisted suicide, the Archbishop considered it feasible in our society. Following the backlash, the Pontifical Academy for Life released a statement on April 24th, reiterating that Paglia, in full conformity with the Church's magisterium, reaffirms his no to euthanasia and assisted suicide. As more Australian states are seeking exemption from a federal ban on telehealth for assisted suicide, Close to 1,000 health professionals have joined hands to oppose the move. They include doctors and leaders in geriatric and palliative care. Euthanasia advocates in Australian states are seeking the repeal of a federal ban on using the phone or the internet to counsel or encourage assisted suicide. The issue will be discussed at the April 28th meeting of the Standing Council of Attorneys General in Darwin, under the leadership of Queensland, with the support of several other states. Against this backdrop, 1,000 leaders have penned an open letter in the Weekend Australian, saying that the move would create a great hazards and injustice. In the letter, they said, further relaxation of criminal codes to facilitate telehealth for assisted suicide would remove protections owed those vulnerable to suicide under duress and in need of palliative care, aged care and mental health services, especially so in regional and remote Australia. In the United States, a Christian preacher has appealed to the Oklahoma Supreme Court after he was given a 5-year gag order which threatens him with jail time if he violates it and speaks against LGBTQ events. Speaking to Fox News Digital, Pastor Rich Penkowski of Warriors for Christ said the restraining order was unconstitutional and could create a precedent that curbs free speech of Christians. The pastor posted a public photo of the same-sex wedding of the executive board president of the Bartlesville chapter of Oklahomans for Equality and cited Bible verses condemning homosexuality. According to a police report, the same-sex couple felt threatened and harassed by the social media posts of the pastor and sought a restraining order. Catholic bishops in the state of Florida have decried the signing of a bill that allows prisoners to be given the death sentence without a unanimous jury verdict. The bill was signed into law by Governor Ron DeSantis on April 20th. Under the new law, an inmate can be sentenced to death if 8 of the 12 jurors recommend a death sentence. The Catholic bishops, represented by Michael Sheedy, executive director for the Florida Conference of Catholic Bishops, decried the move as a setback. For long, the bishops have been advocating for the end to the death penalty. They have also called for sentences of life in prison rather than capital punishment. According to the new law, if less than 8 jurors agree on the death sentence, then the inmate must be given life in prison without the possibility of a parole. Several Anglican bishops from Africa have expressed their concerns over the Church of England's decision to bless same-sex relationships. The decision was described as pastorally deceptive and blasphemous by the prelates at the 4th Global Anglican Future Conference of the Global Fellowship of Confessing Anglicans in Rwanda. The conservative prelates decried the departure of the Anglican Church from the historical faith. They said the synod's decision was against the faith and the order of the Orthodox provinces in the communion. The gathering also expressed a lack of confidence in the leadership of the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Most Reverend Justin Welby, and urged the Church of England to reverse its decision to bless same-sex unions. The Italian Minister of Economy has devised plans to fight against the shrinking population due to falling birth rates. While addressing the questions on combating the demographic crisis, Minister Giancarlo Giretti emphasized the move to use tax benefits to encourage families to have children. The minister said it's important to remove restraints on the birth rate. The minister also pointed out plans to reduce the labor taxes of families with children. He expressed his willingness to increase the purchasing power of the families, explicitly focusing on working women, with tax deductions according to the number of children. According to the UK's Equality Watchdog, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's most notable asylum legislation runs the risk of violating international commitments to defend human rights and could put vulnerable people in danger. The Equality and Human Rights Commission argued the unlawful immigration bill would undermine protections for victims of trafficking and restrict rights to asylum in an uncommon intervention between the Commons report stage of the legislation on Tuesday. The Commission stated that the bill would also permit the confinement of pregnant women and children and ignore the effects of torture victims and individuals with disabilities. To reduce the number of individuals using small boats to cross the English Channel to reach Britain, Sunak launched the controversial proposal in March. The United States, the United Kingdom, and the European Union tightened their sanctions on Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, on Monday for alleged rights violations. James Cleverly, the Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom, announced a travel ban, an asset freeze, and a designation of the IRGC in its entirety. 8 people, including a politician, a regional IRGC commander, and representatives of its investment arm, a telecom firm, have been added to Brussels' sanctions list, along with mobile service provider Oriental. The telecom company is charged with assisting law enforcement in finding demonstrators. The 27-nation European Union has imposed 7 rounds of sanctions on Iran since the death of Mahsa Amini, the 22-year-old Kurdish girl who died in custody because of torture after being arrested for flouting the strict dress code for women. In response, Iran has imposed its own sanctions on the UK and the EU in a tit-for-tat move. On Monday, a Palestinian man injured at least 5 people when he rammed his car into a crowd near the busy open-air Mahani Yehuda market in Jerusalem. The perpetrator was then shot to death by a civilian. According to reports, one man in his 70s was struggling for his life. The culprit, a Palestinian living in the Beit Safafa neighborhood, reportedly had a mental illness, but police said they are unaware of any ties with terrorism. This took place as Israel was preparing to commemorate its Memorial Day for fallen soldiers and militant attack victims, starting at dusk on Monday, and its 75th Independence Day the following evening. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu condemned the incident as a terror attack. In Belgium, the government is discussing the possibility of raising the abortion limit from 12 to 18 weeks. This move has divided political parties, including those within the ruling coalition. A bill from the Socialist Party, which was co-signed by deputies from 8 parties, has been pending in Parliament. It seeks an extension of the limit for abortion. But the Christian Democratic and Flemish Party, the New Flemish Alliance, and the Vlaams Belang Party are opposed to the move. Since 1990, abortion has been legal in the country. And those are your latest headlines. Join us again tomorrow for more. You can also visit swnews.org for more updates. Shalom.